Welcome back, Vic Ferrari.
Patrick, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Vic has been on my show, I think, more than 10 times. I was looking last night. I'm like, holy cow. I didn't realize it was that much. Either you were a guest or a co-host or a part of, one of the shows. So thank you very much.
I appreciate it. I didn't realize it was that many times.
I didn't either. I was looking and I'm like, holy shit. But I thought we would start the show today. And one of the main things is obviously to talk about your newest release, but I wanted to talk to you real quick about the homicide, in New York, the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, and the suspected killer Luigi Mangione. Newest updates. Here's the things that popped out of me, and I want to get your slant on it too. This happened in New York. What exactly was the area? Because I'm not real familiar with New York at all. Where did this happen?
Oh, it's in the heart of Midtown on the west side. I mean, during the daytime, there's a million people out.
Yeah, because it was in the morning, right? He went to
Yeah, 6:40 a.m.
Yeah, that's pretty early. But is there pretty good like pedestrian traffic that time in the morning in that area?
No, I mean, there's people around, but it's not, getting
It's
hot and
not super
heavy.
crowded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's people working the midnight shift to get off early, or people that are going into work early. I mean, there would be people around, but it wouldn't be like 2, 3 in the morning. There'd
So
be some people out, but
I'm not familiar with the area that well at all. But is this like mostly like office buildings and just
yeah,
like restaurants kind of thing?
more office buildings and hotels.
Okay, gotcha. All
And then
right.
you got corporate America on the lower floors, like Starbucks or,
Okay. All right.
coffee and quick places to grab something to eat.
Here's the things that jumped out at me, and I'm not a homicide detective, but I probably know a little more than the average bear when it comes to this kind of stuff because both of us have been around a bunch of dead bodies and homicides. But first off, they said, well, this guy was a pro, and I'm like, I don't think so. Why would he keep his gun? That should be at the bottom of an ocean or a lake or something or a river.
Yeah, I mean, why did he hold on to the gun? Why did he hold on to the silencer or suppressor? Why did he hold on
Right.
to the numerous fake identifications? I think
Correct.
he had New Jersey and New York bogus driver's licenses, which he was able to use to get on the bus to secure the room at the youth hostel on the west side. So to me, it's a kid living out a fantasy.
Yes.
I think he's a child of privilege. I get that he had a lot of back pain, but here's the thing, comes from money. He's 26 years old, so more than likely, I'm guessing he's on his parents' health plan. He didn't pay a dime. And here's another ironic thing: his father owns nursing homes.
Yes. He made his
So
money
his
off of
father,
insurance. Yeah.
yeah. So I really don't get. It's not like the health insurance companies bankrupted his family.
Right. That's, at first I thought to myself, this is a guy that lost his, like, a loved one to cancer,
Right.
and United Healthcare, denied chemotherapy or something like that, or radiation. And he thinks that, this guy killed, a loved one. And that makes sense to me. I don't condone it, obviously, but that explains it. He also had a backpack that they found, I think, in Central Park filled with Monopoly money. And just,
He's a
he's
kid
just
playing a game.
yeah, yeah. Well, he's a nutcase. That's a
Oh, well, yeah.
given. So he's not a pro, and all these internet. That's the problem with the internet. You have all these internet experts in air quotes. Oh, he's a pro. It's very obvious. Look at his shooting stance. He's using a suppressor and blah blah blah. I'm like, not really. So he probably spent a little time at a range. That doesn't make you
No, and he
freaking
left a
James
ton of
Bond.
evidence. He left a ton of evidence behind. He
Right.
left three spent shell casings, three live rounds, because that type of gun, he's got to clear it.
Yep.
And then he's writing stuff on it to torment the cops. So I don't think he has a lot of respect for law enforcement with the monopoly money and leaving the shell casings with whatever he wrote on them that comes back to some kind of book. Yeah, he's a kid. He's a rich, spoiled kid. He's immature, and he's about to realize, what he's done and what he's going to give up a lot of his life for.
Yeah, he sure will. And the NYPD, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they threw everything but the kitchen sink at this
Oh,
investigation, it looked like.
the amount of detectives for something like that high profile. I was guessing 80 to 100 detectives they had out. Whatever evidence they recovered, it was getting hand delivered to ballistics or the lab. Whatever resources they had, I said, this is going to get solved. It's only a
Yeah.
matter of time. And then once, you see the kid stopped at a Starbucks and, he's left behind DNA with food wrappers and
I know.
coffee and water. That's not going to catch him, but that's going to link him to it after they arrest him. Like, how are you going to
Right.
explain what you were doing there?
Oh, absolutely. And just, again, he's in chronic back pain. I was looking at something on YouTube last night. He's got four screws in his back, and I'm thinking to myself, I've gone through a ton of stuff with my back, and not once did I think to myself, well, I'm gonna go, kill somebody
I
because my
know.
back hurts. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
There's
he's one of these kids that he got radicalized in college.
yes, yes.
And I said on my podcast, it's history repeating itself. It's the same as all these grad students from Ivy League schools in the 70s, the Weather Underground, Bernadette Dawn, William Ayers, Kathy Bowden, David Gilbert. The Weather Underground, they were setting off bombs all over the place. They were robbing armored cars.
Well, it
And then
reminds me of
eventually they
the
go,
it reminds me of the Symbionese Liberation Army with Patty Hearst.
them too. Yeah, yeah, the
Yeah,
ones that kidnapped Patty Hearst. Yeah, that group. They're going to take it to the man. But here's the thing with the left. All these people I'm talking about got out because the left takes care of its own. And I can guarantee you this kid will get convicted. There's no doubt in my mind. He's not going to beat this. But they will, between his money and these attorneys on the left, they will file appeals. They
oh yeah,
will write letters. At 26 years old, I can guarantee you whatever sentence, yeah, they're going to sentence him to life or 30 years. I might not see it in my lifetime, but he will be out in his late 50s, early 60s. He will get out. There's no
oh
doubt
yeah,
in my mind that there
yes.
will well, he served his time. With his education, he's going to start counseling people, look
Right,
at all
he's
the
gonna
good he
mentor
did in
other
jail.
prisoners. Right, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, all that bullshit. So he's definitely going to get out
Yeah,
eventually.
what shocked me, and maybe I shouldn't be shocked, was the amount of support he was getting. Now all of a sudden these keyboard tough guys are like, "Well, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he's the insurance CEO. He deserves to die," and blah blah blah. I'm like, really? You know
What's
what?
next? I don't like Patrick's podcast. I'm going to kill him. I
Right,
don't like Vic's book. I'm going to whack him. I
right.
mean, when does it end?
Exactly. But again, I think it comes down to the culture of, like I said, keyboard tough guys.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to sit behind a computer screen and, it's like, I don't like Vic's shirt today. I'm going to be a big bully. Not that I have anything against Vic's shirt today, but all I'm saying is it's so easy when you're not facing the person. And like Vic should
Oh,
punch
yeah.
me in the nose if I say something like that, but you can't reach through the computer screen to do it. And this is it on steroids. It got ridiculous. The GoFundMe was up to about 100,000 to support this kid. And they
Oh, I didn't
finally
even
they
know. GoFundMe's got some pair of balls because there were other things with GoFundMe that like for other controversial things with like cops and stuff, and they took
yep.
it right down. So
Yeah,
that's
they
funny that GoFundMe will have a GoFundMe page for a guy that shoots the CEO of an insurance company, but there was a couple of cops and controversial shootings, or they took those things right down.
well, they did take it down. I think it was yesterday. They did like yesterday or the day before, but it had reached 100. It was like 98,000 and change. And I'm like, who is stupid enough? First
Oh,
off,
I know.
obviously this kid doesn't need your money. Mommy and daddy are swimming in it. And he was living in Hawaii. And I'm like, okay, he's in Hawaii. And then his parents were in San Francisco. They filed a missing persons report
Yeah.
on him. And that's how things kind of like jumped off with all this. And what's the deal with Hawaii and crazy people lately?
Oh,
The
I
the
know.
attempt assassin guy for Trump, who you never hear about anymore. He was living in Hawaii. This guy was living in Hawaii. What's going
Well, what
on
about
there?
that Hannah Kobayashi? She
Oh
she
yeah.
basically decides I'm going to unplug from my family and everyone else. The father's looking all over for her. He commits suicide, and then they find her down in Mexico alive and well.
Yeah. And just yeah, live with that.
Too much
It's like
pineapple.
too much nice weather. I don't know. I understand it here. It's gray and now it's raining, and then 4 days ago it was in the single digits, and you couldn't even go outside. It was so damn cold. That drives people crazy. But what perfect weather year round is driving you nuts? I don't understand
I
it.
don't get it.
Oh, but any other thoughts on that before we move on?
No, he's going to jail for a long time. It'll die down for a while until the hearings start and everything. I mean, and then it'll be a circus. They're going to cover the shit out of it a year and a half, 2 years from now, whenever it goes to trial. And then, after he's sentenced, normal people will forget about it and the crazies will write him fan mail.
Yeah, I wonder how many marriage proposal he's gonna get. Yeah, yeah, that
Oh,
that
yeah, I know.
that's not uncommon. So where are they gonna hold him? That I'm curious about that until
Depends on
the
who's going to
trial.
charge him. If the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is going to charge him, he'll come in, he'll spend a night or two in the tombs, which is beneath the courthouse. They call it the tombs because it's like going into Tut's tomb. It's
Okay,
all underground. More than likely, he's probably going to be, if it's still open, they were talking about closing it, but he'll go to Rikers Island where he'll be extorted for commissary money and beat up. And even though they'll have him in segregation, it's still he'll still get fucked with. If it goes federal, he'll be the housed at MCC, which is a couple of blocks away from the federal courthouse, which is across the street from the Manhattan DA's office, or MDC, which is in a warehouse for federal inmates in Brooklyn. The reason I say it might go federal is because it was interstate, it was planned
right.
interstate, and then you got the suppressor, the silencer, the ghost gun. So I'm sure the Manhattan DA's office isn't going to want to let this go because it's a high profile case. The only problem is the Manhattan DA's office, which was the crown jewel of the five boroughs as far as prosecuting cases during my time, has turned into the circus of the stars. So I don't know who's going to prosecute this,
So if the FBI thinks that they have a good case and they're gonna get
or
a
the
lot of
ATF.
like FaceTime or the ATF, they're definitely gonna want a piece of it.
Well, yeah, it would be the U.S. Attorney's Office of the
Yeah,
Southern District.
yeah. Oh well, stay tuned, I guess, and
Yeah,
I hope that kid's miserable and he figures out.
I know.
You have fun with that. Now you're going to be in, real person jail with real criminals.
Oh, yeah.
So that should be interesting. But anyways, let's talk about you for a second here, Vic. NYPD Presumption and Dysfunction, part of your Tell All NYPD books. What number is this for you?
This is my eighth book.
Man, that's so cool. How long has it taken you to write 8 books?
About 8 years. I average a book a year.
Okay. Now, I know we've talked about this before, but just to refresh people's memories, what was the preface of this? How did this start? It's like, you're a retired New York City police detective. You're retired. You did a few things after retirement. You, like most people from cold climates, you moved to a warmer one.
Yeah.
What put it in your head? It's like, hey, I'm just gonna start writing books now.
I was bored. It's just out of necessity. I was bored out of my mind. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to work as an insurance investigator or private security. And friends and family said, you got all these stories in your head. You should start writing them down. And that's what I did. I just said, all right, I'll take a shot in the dark. I wrote my first NYPD book. It started to sell. And then I just keep cranking them out. It's kind of evolved into a little cottage industry where I average a book a year. Then that enabled me to start a podcast to talk about my books and my NYPD stories. So, I'll take this train to the end as long as people are buying the books and are interested. I'll keep doing it.
Now, if there's somebody that's listening, and they don't have to be a cop, but we do have a lot of stories, or if you had had an interesting life. Now, what was the nuts and bolts? How did you learn how to do this? Because you're self-published, just like
Hmm?
most of my books are as well. How did you learn all this?
Just reading. I did an incredible amount of reading on the internet, and as a cop, you're suspicious. So there were a lot of these companies that were offering, yeah, give us 3,000, 5,000, 10,000. We'll put a book together for you. We'll give you a ghostwriter. I'm like, I think I'm going to try this all by myself. So what I do is I write the manuscript and then I find I usually run my manuscript through two editors, a copy editor, proofread, and I've got a company that produces my book covers, and I get it formatted. And for me, my paperbacks, it takes me about 2,500 bucks all in, and my goal is to make that money back within the first year.
Right. Absolutely. Would thinking back, if you would have talked to Vic, 20 years ago or longer, when
Um,
you were on the job, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to retire and start writing books about, my career.
never,
What would you have
never.
said?
It's funny. never would have, I would have laughed at you. Because the first thing I would have said was, I can't write about this. The second thing was, how am I going to do it? And the third thing is why I took the job. But there's been a couple, and I'm not going to name names, there's been a couple of overeducated guys that went to prestigious schools that joined the NYPD for just that purpose. I'm gonna,
Oh, okay.
and they start the job late because they're coming in at 30. It used to be 28 years old. Now it's like God only knows they'll take anybody, but whatever age. But yeah, there was a couple of guys that came in with wasn't protect and serve and rock and roll. It was I've got this education. I'm going to figure out. I'm going to learn as much as I can about the job and then write a book off it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. That kind of makes sense, but did it ever work out for him? Probably not.
Yeah,
It did?
mixed
Okay.
results.
Mixed
One guy did
results.
fairly well, and the others not so good.
Yeah, I know this is a off topic, but it spurred some memories, where you had people that had other careers and thought, A, it would be cool to be a cop
Oh,
or whatever. I mean, we had a guy that him and his wife I think he was a neurosurgeon, his wife was a cardiologist. And it's like, you know what, social justice warrior here, the police are doing all this stuff. I'm going to go in and I'm going to change everything. And it took him, I think, less than a year before he quit. And it's
oh
just
yeah,
this, oh, they sent him off to a very busy district. And it's like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. Oh, my brother, man, really doesn't love me, and you get
yeah,
very disillusioned very
yeah.
quickly.
Hey, my man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And everyone's looking like, what? What are you talking about? So,
I feel your struggle. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because he didn't have to work. They had enough money, and his wife was still, the brain surgeon or the heart surgeon or whatever.
I always said the best cops come in on the ground floor young. There's exceptions to any rule, but I saw a lot of guys like you said, accountants, lawyers, all sorts of stuff. That funeral directors, for whatever reason, they got the bug in their late 20s, early 30s, and they shift into law enforcement. Law enforcement is a young man's game. You
It is.
learn the most when you're young and impressionable when they can mold you. When you're older and you got life experience, you realize, well, why am I doing this? Bad things can happen. I got a wife and kids. I got a mortgage, right? And you see that like guys like, I'm not the first one going in through that door. It's like, what are you talking about? Like they would hesitate. You know
Right.
what I mean? Or have second thoughts about everything. And you know how that is in that world. Sometimes you can't have second thoughts or hesitate. Get you killed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hesitation will kill you. There is no doubt. And that's the thing that worries me the most in today's police culture with body cameras and everybody, filming you. Everybody's got a phone
Yep.
that's got a camera. You know, you have cops that are second guessing themselves when they shouldn't be or hesitating, and that will kill you dead. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
So that's my biggest worry, among others, for the guys and gals that are out there right now doing the job. That's tough. So don't do that, okay? Just go with your gut. Most of the time, your gut is right. So former coworkers, I know you have stories about them in the books. Have any of them ever come back to you and said, "Hey, that's kind of funny," or "Why'd you put me in there?" Obviously, you changed the names, to
Oh
protect the
yeah.
innocent, but what does that look like?
Luckily for me, cops aren't big readers.
Yeah, they aren't.
They're not.
No.
So I'll hear, like, I've been doing this 8 years. I've got friends on Facebook. You wrote a book? Yeah. Oh, I'm going to buy it. Be my guy. And then I never hear another thing. Yeah, I was very nervous about putting the first book out because I was like, I don't know how the reaction is going to
Right.
be. But it was great. Now guys are feeding me stories. Oh, you should write about this guy. Remember when this happened? And oh, I got a story for you. And don't you remember? So it's actually mostly positive. Bok Choi, my humble Asian sidekick, one time he reached out to me. He pops up in a couple of my books. He's like,
Yes, he
"What are you
does.
doing?" I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not using your name. Just take it easy.
It's funny you should mention that because on last Thursday we had our supervisors union Christmas party. And that was open to retirees and active members. So I went, and you know how it is. the longer you're separated, the fewer people you know. That's
Right.
just the way it is when you go to a function like that. And there's 300 people in that union that are active, and I don't know how many retirees, so a bunch. And there was probably a couple hundred people there. And I had people coming up to me, believe it or not, they're like, "Hey, really good podcast. I love your podcast." And then there'd be three or four of them around them, and it's like, "What's a podcast?" You
Oh, I
know, just
know.
they really don't know. We take stuff for granted, and again, like what you were talking about, as far as it's like, hey, what's going to happen with this first book? I mean, most people don't even know about it. It's
My sergeant, who's popped up in a couple of my books, I guess he's pushing 70 now. Um, I called him up out of the blue just to shoot the shit. Hadn't spoken to him in probably 20 years. And oh, this is great. How do I get your book? And he's like, I don't buy things on Amazon. I don't use the computer. He goes, I'll go to Barnes and Noble. Like,
yeah,
it might be in Barnes and Noble, but it might not. I go, you got grown kids? He goes, yeah. I go, have one of them get you the book. Like,
right.
he didn't. That's happened a couple of times with got retired guys a couple of years older than me, or even my age. Like, I don't do that on the computer. So,
Well,
what are you gonna do?
and so I tried explaining that to my parents. I mean, they're both 85, but I mean, we never had cable TV. We never had
No,
a
me
home
neither. I
theater.
know.
We never had anything that was like
Yep.
high tech. So I'm
I
trying to
know.
explain to my mom what a Kindle is, and she's like, "It's on a screen. What is it doing on a screen?" And I'm just like, "Forget it, Ma." I said, "I got
Yeah,
paperbacks."
it's
So we
just
go.
that's a 2 hour. That might be a day long
Oh
conversation.
yeah, it's like talking somebody down from the space shuttle, and
Oh
telling them
yeah,
how to land. It ain't easy. I gave up with
absolutely.
the VCR. I was amazed that they had one, but that was only because my brother and I pressured them. But anyway, one thing that popped up at me when I was reading your last book was your use of nicknames, and I absolutely love that because it just a flood of memories just start coming back. So some funny ones, some of the funny ones. And if anyone has ever been salty about you bringing this up, has anybody ever said, "Hey, thanks a lot for calling
No,
me
no,
whatever"?
and it's funny the ones that like I kind of throw backhanded comments at. They don't read my books, and I'm not naming them by name. But if you were
Right.
on the job in that time period and you hear that nickname, yeah, you know who I'm talking about.
But I mean, we had Time Bomb Timmy, the guy was crazy.
Yeah, we had
you know,
TikTok.
yeah, we had Time Bomb Timmy. We had Hungry Like the Wolf. We had a detective that was Eileen Wolf. So of course she was hungry like the wolf. And every time she came in, two of my sergeants would get on the loudspeakers and just start howling. And it was just, again, all these memories start flooding. And it's like, could you kind of give us a couple of the nickname ones, that were in your book?
Oh yeah, one guy we called him Cancer because he killed more people than cancer. Had another guy we used to call him Pud, Polish unshaved detective. Bok Choy, my humble Asian sidekick. Another guy we used to call Mardi Gras head because he had a big head like a Mardi Gras. Yeah. And what's funny is like someone will get a nickname and they don't even realize you're talking about them, and then they're
Right.
like, okay, they're talking about me. We're all right, and then they try to figure out the genesis of where it's coming from.
Well, we had one we called Aquanagan, and they kept on stealing his hat and hiding it on him because it was gigantic. It was like a UFO. His head was so big. So, he'd like steal somebody else's hat for inspection or whatever. It's just like sitting on top of his head.
Right, right, won't fit.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, it just, dude, that stuff is so funny. Now, did you have a nickname?
Yeah, I early on I moved around a lot, so they called me the carpetbagger because I would
Okay.
pop up in different places. Like, and I would always early in my career, I was like, I'm not staying here, and like, we need volunteers. I'm like, okay, because I'm like, where I'm going might suck, but I know this sucks. So I bounced around a lot in my first 5 years, so they started calling me the carpetbagger, and it kind of stuck.
Okay, I love it. Yeah, isn't that amazing how you can go from, for you, precincts, for us it was districts, and your reputation will precede you before you get there.
Yeah.
There's a transfer order or a promotion order, and everybody knows where everybody's going. It's like, oh God, here we go. It's like, oh yeah,
Oh,
this
the
is pretty
phone's
cool.
ringing off the hook. the phone's ringing, especially if you fucked up or
Yep.
you did something stupid or you're not a, you're not a good cop or you're not a good guy or good gal. Oh yeah, they know, people know the phone's ringing. You don't even know the guy calling up. Just that and the TS, I'm like, this piece of shit, I just got a call from the 105. Like, we're getting some guy here, and they're kind of there's pitchforks and torches on the other end of the phone. Like, they want to kill this guy.
Yeah. I mean, again, all these, you must have had big, dumb, fill in the blank, I would think, for more than one person.
I'm
We,
sorry.
you would have at least one or two or more big, dumb, like Pat, or big, dumb, whatever.
Yeah, guy. Well, I mean, you listen, every precinct or like what you guys districts got a couple of guys that they don't get it. And they just, for whatever reason, they always choose the wrong path. They always fuck something up. And then the supervisor's like, I'm not even going to give the, and basically it taxes everyone else because they don't want to give them anything because they know they're going to screw it up. It's going to make more work for the supervisor. So who's ever in that squad's got to handle certain things because they know this guy is either going to not do it, fuck it up, or make a bad situation worse.
Well, we had a guy that he's a he called in sick because a giraffe bit him. A giraffe. And we're like, what? So we're all like,
Why would you even say that? You're going to get your
well,
balls broken. Like, even if that's true,
it actually happened. Somebody's like, yeah, his parents own a petting zoo up north. I'm like, you've got to be shitting me. And
I
I'm
got a
like,
sore
okay.
throat. I got a sore throat. Can't come in. I'm not feel. I got pneumonia. Anything. I got bit by you. You don't think that's going to come back to bite you in the ass? No pun intended.
Well, it gets worse because, a couple of years later, he was known as that guy, the giraffe guy. But then he gets involved in a high-speed pursuit. And, what do we do with a lot of morons? We promote them. So when I was a sergeant and there's a high-speed pursuit, guys driving like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or some high-end car. They pull him out of the car, blah, blah, blah. And he's in the back of the wagon. And they look in the back of the wagon and his handcuffs are on the ground. Well, now it's go time. The sergeant pulls him out and he's losing his temper a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, and the guy is like, handcuffs don't work on me. Handcuffs. What do you mean? And he looks and he's like, he didn't really have hands. They were like club hands. He could maneuver a car somehow, but they were so narrow
Well,
the
like
cuffs would
nubs?
slip right off. Yes, they would slip right off. So it's like, oh, this is the guy who couldn't put it. He was putting handcuffs on a guy that didn't have hands, and we're like, oh my God. You don't think that stuck with him forever? It just
I've seen
what the
guys with one hand get arrested and they'll cuff him to his belt loop.
right. I've seen that
I've
too.
seen that.
I've done that actually, yeah. But yeah,
Well, like, real fat guys, you need like sometimes three, four sets of cuffs
well,
to
I
get
would
their
use
arms behind.
or the shackles that you'd use on their ankles.
We didn't have those. Narcotics had those. You didn't have those in the precinct.
Oh, we had those. Oh, they work like Lucky Charms. I love those things. It's like, yeah, you're not going to run away from me wearing those shackles. Those were great. But anyways, another thing from your book that I liked, your relatives quizzing you about the TV show NYPD Blue. And
That was my ex-girlfriend's father, and he would
that's what it
always
was.
say, and he would get the name wrong. Like the guy never missed an episode, and he would say, on NY New York PD Blue, do they, are you allowed to sleep in the station house? And I'm like, no. Well, they do on New York PD Blue. And I'm like, well, it's my girlfriend's father, and I'm not really looking to get into a pissing match with him. And I would
Right.
just say, well, no, I was nice about it. But oh, yeah, people have, how that is. People have assumptions of what we can and cannot do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as NYPD Blue goes out, what did you see as the most unrealistic or silly since you lived that world for a lot of years compared to what was on TV?
Well, I never watched an episode of NYPD or New York PD Blue as from my ex-girlfriend's father. But, you know, um, car chases, you're not allowed to shoot at cars. We weren't allowed to get into car chases for stolen cars. We did it all the time, but if the bad guy got hurt or a police car got wrecked or God forbid a civilian got dinged, then yeah, they'd be looking to take your job.
Right.
Um, what I find it ironic, like on television in the movies, you make an arrest and you're out that night going out with your friends talking about it. It's like, when you make an arrest in New York, you're, well, at least during my time, you're married to that prisoner,
Ugh.
and it takes hours in the station house. Then you
Right.
got to take them down to central booking. If there's a lot of arrests that day or night, you could be on a line waiting to get into the building with your prisoner for an hour. If he's got to go to the hospital, you got to take him to the hospital. No
Right.
one's going to relieve you. So an arrest can take 24 hours. I've seen it.
See, in the old days, I started in 95 and I got out in 20. And before I got there, when you arrested somebody, it was exactly what you said. You're at a district station, you arrest somebody, you would actually have to take them to the city jail downtown, and you would have to present your prisoner in front of the sergeant and tell them what he's under arrest for. And they would review the probable cause statement, etc. And then from there, they'd be in a bullpen,
Oh
like a
yeah.
holding cell while you're writing all your reports. Then a sergeant has to approve all that. And then you would go to the DA in the morning to try and get, charges filed on this
We
person.
used to see the DA central booking was open when I got first hired, was open 24 hours.
See, ours,
So after the bullpens, you waited in a room with detectives, cops, sergeants that made arrests in the 12 precincts of the Bronx, or if you were in Manhattan, I think Manhattan's got 24, 30 precincts, you'd be in a room. And that's where I learned so much, because and then they basically got away from that. Then you had to do it over the phone. You go back to the precinct. But in the old days, you'd be in a room, big room, like a conference room. And I learned so much because there were gun guys there, there
okay.
were car guys there were narcotics guys there. And it was like, for me, it was like school. I was
Okay.
learning so much. I learned about traps in cars from one guy. I learned from another guy how to spot someone carrying a gun, or where guys are hiding drugs in cars. So I learned, it was like going to college. It was a
Oh,
lot of fun, but then
yeah.
like anything else, they screw it up, and it's like they wanted to cut back on overtime, the travel
Right.
time to and from the courthouse. So then you had to just stay at your precinct, and then a DA would call you up.
Yeah. For us, what happened was they had full-time liaisons that would have the case, they'd run the cases through the DA's office, depending on the case. If it was complicated or if it was a major felony, you had to take it yourself to explain this, to the DA. But, we arrested so many people, it just became so labor intensive. It's like, we can't do this anymore. We need, like full-time people. And we have people that was their job, was just to present cases to the DA, to the DA.
No, with us, it was forward facing. You did it. I mean, your arrest, you're
Wow.
talking to the DA.
Damn. Interesting. So there's another story in your book, a female police officer who lost her handcuff key and had somebody cuffed to her bed, and you guys had
Yeah.
to take care of that. Well, tell us
I didn't
about
have to
that.
take care of it. No,
Okay.
a buddy of mine worked in a precinct detective squad and had a female sergeant that was running the squad, and she liked to party. She liked the nightlife, and
And she liked to boogie.
she liked to boogie. And one day she called in late, and one of the detectives said, "You want me to sign you in?" And she said, "No, no, I'm going to come in later. I need you to do me a favor." And she lived up in neighboring Westchester County, which is about 30 miles away. And she said, I need someone to come up here. And he's like, all right. And she's like, oh, and bring a handcuff key. And then she hung up. So two detectives went up there, and they're laughing. They don't know what it could be, and they see a car with Jersey plates parked in front of her townhouse, and they knock on the door. She comes out in her nightie with a robe, and thank you, takes the handcuff. I'm going to come in later, and they're detectives, and part of it is busting balls, and part of it is, what if something went wrong in there, and
Right.
we just
Absolutely.
left the five boroughs without authorization, so they could get screwed. What if somebody's dead in there? So the older detectives told her, said, you mind if I use the bathroom? And she reluctantly let him in. And he's going down the hallway, and he sees the bedroom door shut, and he walks in, and she's yelling at him, no. And there's a guy handcuffed to the bed. And he uncuffs the guy, and the guy starts getting dressed, and the detective starts quizzing him, like, is there anything you want to tell me? And the guy's like, what? He goes, there any? He goes, listen, I just want to go to work and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
So she picked the guy up in a bar. They were fucking around. She must have lost her handcuff key. And then it became a problem. And, the guy wasn't there against his will, but, he took off and then they had something to hold over her head for a while.
Oh yeah, and for those who are not in the know, that's a big deal when you leave the city. Just leaving the city,
Yeah.
without any kind of authorization, we just don't come and go as we please. That's a huge no-no.
Well, it used to, for us, like, no, cops in uniform, that's a big no-no. So, but like if you're a detective and you work in a specialized unit, you can, but it just used to be you filled out a form and you faxed it somewhere. Then it became they wanted you to fill out the form the day before. And like, well, sometimes that's
Right. There's still an
can't. It's an emergency.
investigation.
I'm
Right.
getting an
Yeah.
emergency search warrant in New Jersey for this guy's, and then you've got to call up and talk to some pencil pusher in Department of whatever's office, and then it just became a real pain in the ass. I mean, you can do it, but it's just they like anything else, they just made it more complicated than it should be.
Right. And it always spawned from somebody screwing up. The more rules that are in place is because somebody screwed up somewhere and it's like, well, we can't have that again. And it's
There's that, and then you get guys that never were detectives before or never were street guys. They're academics, and they're like,
oh,
well, "What are
sure.
we doing this for?" And then they'll just decide to change things because they can, and it just kind of screws everything up.
Yeah, on day shift, you had to notify your captain, who would notify, the boss over in communications. I'm looking at the patrol side of it. And at night, you would have to call the night inspector, and usually the night inspector was perfectly fine with it. They're if they knew you, and it's like, oh
Right.
yeah, Pat's not going to do that. Just he wants to go on a tour of Waukesha County tonight or something. It's like no, because we're going to go pick up Joe Schmo or whatever the case may be. And they know that you're not going to screw them. But
Right.
day shift was worse that way actually, because there was a lot of shaky captains. They were afraid to because they might have to talk to their boss. It's like, oh, I don't know if I want to explain this
Days is
or
usually the dead wood.
yeah, it very, very true. So, anyways, and one more that I loved in this Odd Todd retirement. I remember reading that. Tell us about Odd Todd.
Highly intelligent detective, a lot of fun to be around, could tell a story, but he was a pain in the ass. He was an eccentric, and he had a buddy that was very close to the police commissioner and had moved this guy all around the NYPD chessboard. He worked in a lot of specialized units, and we call it parachuting in because he didn't even do an interview to come into our office. He just showed up, and likable guy, knew absolutely nothing about auto crime. But and I wasn't partners with him, but like if his partner banged in and my partner had court, I would get in a car with him. I'd help find him an arrest because he was just so funny and just interesting. And but he was odd, and he would rub the supervisors the wrong way because he would park in the lieutenant's spot.
Oh,
He never handed in his stuff in time. He just used to frustrate the supervisors. And for me, it was funny because I got to watch it, but I wasn't living it. And one afternoon, he and I had to go out to Queens to do election details. So in NYPD, whenever there's an election, they have cops at the polls. And at the end of the shift on the 4 to 12, you take these envelopes with all the counters from the machines, you bring it to an NYPD precinct, and then the voting results gets entered into a police computer, and that goes downtown. So we got out, I don't know, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. We're heading back to the Bronx. And he says, I think I'm going to retire tomorrow. I said, what? He goes, I got like 5 months. I got 5 months on the books, comp time. He goes, I think I'm just going to retire. And I'm like, I thought he was joking. And he's like, no. And I was like, Todd, listen, you got to give the CO or commanding officer, or at least our lieutenant, the heads up. In the NYP, it's like the firm. You just can't retire
right.
because you got to go to the pension sec, and no cop worth his salt is just going to retire and pull the plug without knowing what he's going to get, what
Oh,
his monthly
absolutely.
pension thing is, right? He
Yep.
goes, well, no, I'm going to do that. I just don't want to come into the office for the next 5 months. And I'm trying to talk him out of it, and I can see he's just doubling down. I'm like, all right, well, congratulations. So just before we get into the precinct, he goes, can you do me a favor? And I go, what's up? He goes, I need you to hold on to my guns. So it's very difficult to get in New York City or in New York, you need a pistol permit if you're not a cop. And they make you jump through hoops to get one. Even a cop, when you retire, you got to start that process months in advance. Even though you're a cop, they do a background check on you. You got to provide them photos of a safe bolted down to your basement, all this crazy shit, right? So if he's going to pull the plug on his career, he doesn't have the pistol permit yet. So he says, well, could you hold on to the guns for me? And I says, well, no, just voucher them and they'll go down to the property clerk. Because, I don't want to go through the trouble. If you could voucher them and hold them in your locker, guys do it. But if a cleaner breaks into your locker or some rogue cop gets into your locker and those guns go missing, they're going to watch your ass. So I
Yeah, it's
really
a
didn't
huge
want to
deal.
do
Yeah.
it. I really didn't want to do it, but I figured, all right, I got talked into it. And then that night, we got to deal with the desk officers like, this can't wait till morning when your boss is here. So anyway, I vouched the guns. I put him in my locker, and he's just an asshole about the whole thing. That the next day, he set off bells and whistles because the sergeant, I get pulled into a room. Why? Why did he retire? Why didn't he tell anybody? Call him up.
Right.
And my lieutenant found out that I had his guns in my locker, and he goes, well, is that a fact? He goes, give those guns to the property clerk and send them downtown. I said, okay, now it's out of my hands. And about 5 months later, this guy comes breezing into the station house. He's retired. He's all happy. He's got his pistol permit. He goes, you got my guns? And I was processing an arrest. And I'm like, oh, fuck this guy. So I kept processing the arrest. I let him sit for an hour. I went upstairs. I opened my locker and I handed him a receipt I handed him a receipt for the property clerk. And he goes, what the fuck is this? I go, that's where your guns are. He goes, well, I thought you were going to hold on to them for me. I said, I was. And so the lieutenant told me to send him downtown. So he got all frustrated and he left. Hadn't heard a thing from this guy in 15 years. Somehow got my phone number, called me up out of the blue like nothing happened. And he starts asking me questions about Florida. About he's thinking about moving down here and what's it like. And I'm like, call a fucking realtor. And I hung up on him. Because at that point, like he kind of screwed me with the guns and answering all
Right.
these questions and everything. I don't hear from this guy. There's so much more to it, but I don't hear from this guy from 15 years. Now he wants to go down memory lane. And how's Florida? It's called a fucking realtor.
Okay. Being retired and having cops and everybody else trying to set you up with other cops as friends. You went through that in your book. Could you kind of give us a quick rundown on that?
Yeah, it happens all the time. The chapter's called One Big Dysfunctional Family. And as soon as
Right.
I moved down here, you run into people like, oh, I know this guy. He's a retired NYPD cop. You're going to love this guy. And I'm like, I didn't. It's like I'd rather pick and choose my friends that,
Right.
I haven't been on a blind date in 30 years. I'm not going to start that now. My doctor's telling me about this guy. Oh, you're going to love him. I go on his Facebook page. I have nothing in common with this guy. Very political. I'm like, I'm not, I'm going to save myself the trouble. But a good friend of mine who's my accountant, his wife one night is telling me, oh, you're going to love this guy. And my buddy's like, just ignore her. And I said, why? He goes, you guys aren't going to hit it off. And then a couple of weeks later, he and I are going to lunch. And he just stops in his tracks and points to the back of his Jeep, and it's got all these 9/11 bumper stickers on it. And I says, I get it now. He goes, yeah. He goes, he'll tell anybody that'll listen that he was down at 9/11. Now, I don't mind talking about 9/11, but I'm not going to put bumper stickers all over my car.
Right.
That's not who I am. I was there, but that's if someone asked, yeah, sure, I'll talk about it, but that's not how I define myself. And what I write in the book is the guy I was with, his father got captured during the Bay of Pigs invasion. He spent 7 years in a Cuban prison before
Oh,
Castro
God.
kicked him out.
Yeah.
And my buddy goes, yeah, he goes, that's like my father having a bumper sticker that says, I survived the Bay of Pigs invasion. Or fuck you, Castro. So we had a good laugh of it. And we went to another restaurant.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. One of the themes in your book was, being retired and starting a new chapter, pun intended, while being respectful to your old profession. Could you explain that a little bit?
As far as
Yeah, being retired, you start a new chapter as an author, as a podcaster, but you still want to be respectful towards your old profession.
Yeah, I mean, when I got into writing, I said I don't want to get anybody in trouble
Right.
or divorced. And
Yeah.
now that I have the bully pulpit because I'm the one writing books, I mean, there are people I don't like, but like I might mention them in passing, but I don't get that close to the target where you definitely know who I'm talking about. I don't name anybody. But you're right, yeah, and I do try to be as respectful as I can, but I do point out a lot of times the hypocrisy within the department because they'll say one thing and then do something else.
Yeah, that's unfortunately that's politics. It rears its
Oh yeah.
ugly head. You know, one, and I could tell so much when I'm reading your book how authentic it is because I forget which chapter it was, but it's like being in a pursuit but not really being in one. Until you've been a cop, you don't understand that. Could you kind of explain it real quick?
Yeah, well, again, you're not allowed to get into car chases for stolen cars, and I was always into car chases for stolen cars.
Yep.
And the dispatcher, you don't say I'm in pursuit, you say I'm following. And our code was 16 for a stolen vehicle. So I'm like, Central, I'm following a 16 vehicle. But the dispatcher can tell by the amount of distance I'm going in the short period of time. She hears the sirens in the background, she hears the screeching of the tires, and she'll say, like say for I was working in the 50 David, are you in pursuit? Central going northbound on Broadway. And I'm ignoring her. She's asking me if I'm in a pursuit, and I'm just giving my location. Like I don't hear her. Then
Right.
what'll happen is the duty captain will rear his ugly head because he's covering the borough, and if he's cool, he'll start the process. Central, is there a unit in pursuit? And he knows damn well there's a unit in pursuit.
Right.
Now he's just asking, right? If he's a pain in the ass, he'll like terminate that pursuit, and you continue to pretend like you don't hear them. And I never agreed with this because this could get someone killed. Guys will start keying their mic and stepping on
Yeah.
the dispatcher because now that screws me up because now I can't tell you where I am. They think they're protecting me by stepping on the dispatcher or the duty captain or the sergeant that's trying to terminate the pursuit. But in reality, what they're doing is they're knocking out my look. Now I can't give where I'm headed or or if I'm in a foot. Has the car crashed? Have I bailed out? Am I chasing somebody? Am I in the fight of my life? And these guys are stepping on, trying to protect me. They're
Right.
hurting me.
Yeah. Absolutely. But that sparked a lot of memories. It's like, 50, are you in pursuit? I'm following,
Oh
you kind of go a roundabout way. Or when I was in a pursuit, I remember I was an FTO for a while, and every recruit I had, it's like, okay, tonight we're gonna get into a chase. And they're like, you could just do that, and I'm like, in this neighborhood, yes. All I have to do is turn on the lights, and we're gonna be in a chase. And like, it's not difficult. So of course, it's the second night with this copper, fresh out of the academy, and yeah, I hit the lights and the siren, and boom, guy takes off like a jackrabbit. And it's like I knew it was a stolen car, so down we go, and I'm going 80, 85 miles an hour down North Avenue. And yeah, to the dispatcher, I'm like, yeah, the streets are clear. We're going west on North Avenue at 50 miles an hour. And my microphone is still keys. No, we're not. We're going to shh, quiet, quiet. You just sit there, young man. We're okay.
That
We're
that
okay.
happened. That happened once to me. I was working with a guy. We were in a car chase, and the duty captain came over the air and he acknowledged him. I go, "What the fuck?" I just looked at him like, "What are you doing,
Yes.
Patrick? Can I just run it? Can you edit this out? I just got to run to the bathroom quick."
Yeah, no problem. Another gem in your book was the mounted auto theft division, pulling cars off with horses.
Oh
Could
yeah.
you tell that story real quick? I laughed my butt off at that one. That's a goodie.
The chapter is called "The Hypocrite," and it goes into how when I was young and in a precinct, I would call the auto crime division for help on how to ID cars with the vehicle identification numbers change, and they were very secretive. They would lead me on wild goose chases, and I always said, if I ever get in there, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to do something like that. Well, sure enough, 10 years later, I get into the auto crime division and I'm doing the same thing. I'm very secretive. I'm not sharing information. And one night, my partner and I were the only ones in the office. We had an arrest. We were doing something. And this young kid from a Bronx precinct is like calling up every 15 minutes. He found this car stripped in the woods of this park. And he's begging us to come down there and ID it. And like after the third or fourth call, I'm like, listen, why don't you call the mounted anti auto crime division? He goes, mounted auto crime division. I said, yeah. I says, if the car's in a city park, correct? He goes, yeah. I says, yeah, they'll come out. I says, they'll ID it for you. I says, they'll pull it out. They have a team of horses. They'll just pull out the car out. And I was expecting to be told to go, kiss my ass, but the kid just was like, okay. So I gave him the number of the mounted unit. So later that night, my partner goes, "Come on, let's go to the precinct and help this kid out." I said, "All right." So we go down there, and the desk officer goes, "Yeah, auto crime?" And we said, "Yeah." He goes, and he points into the arrest processor. He goes, "Did you tell that fucking idiot that there's a mounted anti-crime unit?" And I started laughing. I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well," he goes, the commanding officer of the Bronx Mount, Troop D mounted unit isn't too happy about it. He says he wants to have this kid EDP'd, like put him in the loony bin. He thinks he's crazy. So I thought it was funny. And he goes, "He wants to see you." I go, "He wants to see me." And he handed me a notification: "See Inspector Flanagan tomorrow, 0800 hours," or whatever it was. So I said, "Oh shit." So the next morning, I got up bright and early. I stopped at a Dunkin' Donuts. I got a box of Joe. I got a box of assorted donuts. And I'm like, I'll go in there. I'll eat some humble pie. I'll give the guy the coffee and donuts, and that'll be the end of it. And I walk in there, and this inspector's reading the paper, and he looked like he was in F Troop. He's got the right mounted guys are different. Their
Yeah, they are.
uniforms are different. They wear the riding boots. They've got different patch. It's like a
Yep.
horse on their arm and all this
Yep.
shit. I always kind of thought it was goofy, but whatever. And I went into his office with the coffee and donuts, and I could tell right off the bat, like he was not a nice guy. And he goes, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry about last night." And he goes, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Oh
So I
no.
said, "Oh." So now I'm saying to myself that the desk officer in the 4-7 sent me on a wild goose chase. This guy didn't want to see me. He just got his name and told me to. So I go, "Listen, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Take the coffee and donuts. I'll be on my way." And he goes, "No, no, no." He goes, "Sit down." He goes, "Son, obviously you fucked up and you're trying to make amends for it." He goes, "Took a donut." And I told him the story about how I led this kid on a wild goose chase. He goes, "Mounted anti-auto crime. That's funny." I said, "All right." So he goes, "Would you mind telling that story again?" So he goes, "Just sit down." Gets on the phone. He calls his admin lieutenant, and he brings in the whole day tour
Oh
shift.
boy.
And the next thing you know, there's like 10 mounted cops in their stormtrooper jackets and helmets that smell like horse and leather, right? He goes, "Oh, Detective Ferrari from the Auto Crime Division got coffee and donuts to dig in." And, it was like their last, cops, they're cheap. They're grabbing those donuts.
Oh yeah.
And I had to tell the story again in front of all these guys, and they're just looking, and they didn't find the humor on it. So I'm trying to leave now with my tail between my legs, and he goes, "Stop by the administrator's office and get an application if you want to work here." And they're all laughing at me. So later that afternoon, I went to the precinct, and the desk officer, I go, "You son of a bitch," and he was laughing. I go, "Did you know him?" He goes, "No, I just called over and asked for his name, and then just sent you there with the impression that he was pissed off." So and then I ultimately wound up helping this kid. But yeah, I came full circle from the wide-eyed, curious for information cop to the cynical, "I'm not sharing any information. I'm not sharing my toys" detective. I was a hypocrite.
For those of us that aren't in the know that are just listening to this, why wouldn't you share that information with a police officer?
Well, so in the auto crime division, we work under the umbrella of organized crime, and Macy's doesn't tell Gimbals, and there's reasons for that. When you work in an organized crime and you go up on wiretaps, I've said it before, anytime we've gone up on a wiretap, a cop wanders onto the playing field. Either
Mm.
he's related to somebody, he owes somebody a favor, he's too friendly with a guy, and he's passing information. And then you got morons that so underneath the hood, there's a confidential vehicle identification number. Instead of pulling the guy over, knowing there's something wrong with the car, asking him to come to the station house, have your partner babysit him inside the station house while you take a look at the car, they'll do it in a bus stop with 40 people outside.
Oh
And then
yeah.
now the perps know where to change the VIN numbers on the
Right.
cars. So there was a lot of that. And then it's also job security.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and people don't realize there isn't just the one VIN that's on the dashboard. Like when you're looking,
No, there's a
from the
bunch.
outside. There's there's a whole bunch and they're stamped. So, yeah. All right. Let's start winding this down a little bit here. Vic's podcast, NYPD Through the Looking Glass. How long have you been podcasting?
About 16 months.
Okay. Yeah, it's going really well. I mean, why did you start it? And did you ever think it would get this popular?
No, I had no intentions of starting a podcast. I was quite content being the guest. Then I realized I could make money doing it. And I says, all right, well, with little investment. So I said, let me see if I can do this. And, sometimes I get guests on that tell their stories. I've had ex-cops, ex-mobsters. And then sometimes I just tell my NYPD stories from my books. And I've built somewhat of a following. I think I'm up to about 1,500 subscribers. And with YouTube, once you hit 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours listened, then they start putting commercials on your
Yep.
podcast. So those annoying things that pop up and we all hit skip. I get like 4 cents or something like that. It sounds like pennies, but if you have a couple of podcasts that get a couple of thousand views, it adds up.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I highly recommend that. And then let's finish this up. Vic's latest book, NYPD, Presumption and Dysfunction, part of the Tell All NYPD books. Oh, you finally stuck a crowbar in your wallet and got it sprung for
No,
it.
it
Good for
wasn't
you.
that. I couldn't, it took forever for me to get author copies.
See,
I was holding up a piece of paper.
I know. I'm like, you cheap screw, just buy the book, damn
No,
it.
they weren't available yet.
Oh, okay. See, I always buy an electronic copy of my book and I always buy a paperback because I want to make sure all the links are correct and I want to experience the same thing that a customer does. So I always do that. But yeah, everybody go out and get that. They're great books. I tell you what, I literally laugh out loud or I'm like going to the gym or the grocery store. That's my test of these books is like I listen to them on your Alexa. You could listen to a Kindle book. That's the way I
Oh,
do
I didn't
it.
know that.
Yeah, it's so I can listen to it on my phone and then I use the Bluetooth and I listen to it in my car or in my earbuds when I'm at the gym. It's kind of a monotone like drone AI voice, but you get the gist. And
Right.
that's how I get through as many books as I do is by doing stuff like that. There's little hacks. And like I said before, one of my biggest tests of a book, if it's worth its salt, is if I'm in a parking lot somewhere and I don't want to get out of the car because I want to hear the end of the story or whatever. I'm like, all right, your books definitely pass those tests, Vic. So
Thank you.
yeah, I absolutely love them. All right, well, tell you what, where can people find out more about you and your books? Where do they go?
So if you go to Amazon, just type in my name, Vic Ferrari, like the car, where you can preview all my NYPD books for free.
Okay, and then your podcast, NYPD Through the Looking Glass, like you said before, it's on YouTube and
Spotify, Buzzsprout,
yeah,
Apple,
Apple,
iTunes, all
yeah,
that stuff.
all the major ones. All right, well, very good. As always, Vic, it's a pleasure talking to you. Always fun, and we'll be chatting with you again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Merry